Hello everyone, you are watching part 2 of this series. If you haven't seen part 1, please look at the description and click on that. We're going to continue with the brake repair and other jobs and trying to make this car workable again for Paula. Again, I'm doing it for free, helping my neighbor out. So please don't be too hard on me.
So now this is the front suspension. We're under the car. You can see the front brake line. It's got 3 more holders here. That's the middle one over here. You can see that nice bolt sticking out. There's another one behind there, and there's a third one there, and then 2 more on the upper part that you can reach from the engine compartment. So once I took these 3 bolts or 3 screws out, then I can remove that brake line. The brake line ends up in the proportioning valve under the servo.
I got the old brake line out. It wasn't easy just to get it out. Holy moly. So anyhow, I had to cut it to get it out just about there. I had to cut it at the flexible brake hose also, and it came out like down in front of the car. So finally I got the metal line connected to the rubber hose. Before I put this stift in, or whatever that holder is, I just had it out just to stand alone and hang up in the air, and then make sure it was cut the thread very nicely, or got in very nicely by hand, because I don't want to cross thread it. Very easy to cross thread it. So as long as both of them are in the air, you can find just the right angle to mate them together and screw that knot in. And it's still not tightened because I have not placed the holders while holding this metal brake line to the frame. So until then, it actually can change its position if it wants to, but I actually set it up here, so make sure that's correctly held in position. And then I'm gonna able to still move it as I need to. But at first, I want to have the new proportioning valve. I want to connect the other side of this pipe to the new proportioning valve. And then once that's done, then I'm gonna tie it down, and I'm gonna tie it to I'm gonna place all those holders, just like this one, but holding it to the frame, and then I can position the whole thing finally. So now we're back at the driver's side. Here's the brake booster, that big drum you see. Still need to clean that off before I put the new part on. And then my system is that I do not remove all the brake lines all at once. I only remove those ones what I actually need to work on, to make sure that they will go back to the proper place, the proper position. So once I get the new proportioning valve, I'm gonna reattach them just the way they were, make sure they get the correct position, and then I'm gonna mount them to the frame. But until it arrives, I think I can work on the valve cover gaskets and other things I can reach from here. So I think the next thing gonna be that I'm gonna remove the air filter housing and get on the valve cover gasket change. So how to bleed a GM vehicle, more specifically a Corvette, an old Corvette like this one. So there's a proportioning valve in the system like we've seen it earlier, and I have the old proportioning valve here, right here. And the purpose of that proportioning valve is that there is a piston in it, and let's say the fluid escapes in the back, then the piston will move to the back and closes the valve, and there is no brake fluid will leak out. If it leaks on the front, the valve will move forward, and then only the back brake's gonna work, but it's gonna cut it. So the problem is when you have a completely empty system and you try to bleed the back part, this piston will do what it's supposed to do, moves to the back. And when it moves to the back, it's actually the middle, that piston will pushes this part, and the light will come on inside the car saying brake. The problem is, once it's closed, it will not come back. The only way to make it come back is to press on the pedal and open up the front. And when it feels that there is a fluid loss on the front, the piston will move forward. And when it did, or when it's in neutral position, that's when you have to put that tool in. There is a tool that they sell for about $8 to $10. You can buy it on Amazon or pretty much anywhere. And you put that in there. It basically mimics this switch, and in the end, there's like a flat piece. So when you put it in, it will position, it will hold this piston from moving back and forth. And then you can bleed the back. When you bleed the system, you always start at the furthest part of the system. So in this car, since it's the driver's side where the brake master cylinder is, you start in the back. Now on a Corvette, you also start from the middle bleeding screw and then the outer bleeding screw. Then you go to the other side and same thing, at first the middle one and then the outer one. Now I have a tool which is really handy. I use it now for all my cars. I had to buy this adapter, and it's actually got 2 holes in it and replaces the brake fluid, whatever I use up bleeding. And you can pump this up and then make it create pressure in here. You can see the valve on it, and you create pressure in it. And then when you use up the brake fluid from inside, that actually replaces it right away and puts a pressure on the system. So when you open the bleeding screw, the oil will come out. Sorry, the brake fluid will come right out. Some proportioning valves are not compatible with .5. I had some problems on my Buick before. It was a 71 Buick, and it totally ate up the proportioning valve. So I just use regular brake fluid. You always use a sealed container and a new one because it attracts moisture. So you gotta be careful with that. So now we are under the car, and you can see the proportioning valve, and there is that piece what I screwed in what holds that piston in position right there, that white piece. There is the connector, the electric connector what goes on it. So now I'm gonna unscrew it and show you guys how it looks like. And that was the key. This is why I couldn't bleed this sucker. I had to research it for a while and then look up manuals, and finally this is the key. Okay, so here's that tool. I actually got it at Jags. Here's the Jags number in case you want to buy one. This is how it looks like. Look very similar to the switch, that warning switch, and you simply just screw it in as long as the proportioning valve is in the middle. If it's not in the middle, when you screw it in, it's not gonna do much. So you wanna make sure that that proportioning valve is set to the mid position, and it's actually, maybe if you buy a new one, just start with this. It should be in the mid position. And then when you screw it in all the way, then it will position that piston and will not let it slide to the back or to the front. Again, if it's slid into the back and you are in trouble like I was, open up the front bleeding screws while pushing on the brake, and then it will feel that the fluid will start running to the front, so it will move the valve to the back, and then you can screw that in. So bleeding is complete. So this is how this GM adapter looks like. You can see it's got 2 holes on it. It's available only with 1 hole, or you can, I don't know if you can plug it in, probably cannot, but yeah, you can buy another one with 1 hole for single action unit, and this is what it's called. I just washed it off with denatured alcohol, and it's going back to my store bin for the next job. I got the wheels back from Paula. She didn't do much with them, but at least I have them back. So I put them on. You gotta be careful when you put these wheels on. Make sure the rotors are seating up very nicely. If not, you can put one of these little lug nuts on and set them up, and then they will go right in. And then you put the wheel on, and what I usually do is use a socket which has these 6-angle sockets, not the star-shaped like ones. And then doesn't matter which one you start, just make sure you go, let's say we start with this, then you continue with this, then that, and that, and that, and then basically you do it like twice to make sure it's nicely pulled in. Unfortunately, you can see all these lug nuts are kind of rusted, but again, it's not my car. I got to work with what I got. I think this whole car should be disassembled and restored, but I'm not a Corvette guy and I don't have any aspirations to do that, but we're gonna make it safe and make it run for Paula. So when I'm gonna put the wheels on, let it off the jack stands and put it back on the lift, and we're gonna start working on the transmission. One more thing, when I had the wheels off, I greased up the upper ball joints, and the lowers one will get greased up once it's on the lift. So in the last episode, I showed you guys that I let the oil down, and since then, basically practically for a whole month, the car was sitting on its own with no oil in it. So I figured the rest of the oil will come down, and sure enough, there is some still dripping out of it. So I opened the plug and let it drip. And the next course of action is changing the filter. I'm gonna put a little oil in it. We'll get there in a minute. And then we're gonna change the filter and the gasket around the transmission pan. Looks like it's leaking, and also there is a leak in output shaft seal, which I'm gonna change.
It's right up there. So in order to do that, you're gonna have to take the drive shaft off, but as soon as I pull it out, it's gonna start leaking oil, so might as well start with the pan. These are my favorite pliers for removing oil filters, and it works really well. I got all kind of vehicles from the Greyhound buses to little Fiats, and then I have different sizes consequently. So this is the larger one, but it works great. So I took the filter off. You can see it's all black. I'm gonna let it drip a little bit, then I'm gonna clean it up, the mating surfaces. And then we're gonna put a little oil in it. There's this nice little flathead V valve. Haha, you guys like it? And then I'm gonna put a little bit of oil in the filter. I like to use an old American engines, this Rotella SAE 30 straight 30, because as I understand, the materials are left out from the rest of the oils what you can buy nowadays, because the catalytic converters get plugged up or mad from all kind of stuff what they put in it, so they leave the good stuff out for the modern oils. So I just started to use this Rotella in all my V8 engines. So anyhow, I'm gonna fill it up with oil. I'm gonna lubricate the seal, so we're gonna able to take it off. And when I tighten it, I just hand tighten it and just a little bit back, and then that should do it. So now it's almost full. The reason why I do this, because that way the oil pump will don't have to work extra hours to fill up this filter. So it's already gonna start with oil in it, so the engine wouldn't run dry for a long time until it actually fills up. So now it's clean on the engine, so now we can put it back up. Just so you understand what I'm trying to mumble here, I would not put this oil into any car which I equip with a catalytic converter, because the catalytic converter will be gone in a hurry. But this car, although it had catalytic converter when it was new, but in this stage we have no emissions, and it's been changed to a regular little side pipe, so this is not a problem here. But as I understand, they're leaving these additives out what the tapered camshaft really need to have in order not to ground off the lobes. So yeah, this thing still have it. None of the other oils have it anymore. Or maybe you can buy some specialty oils, which I don't know where to buy or how to buy, but you can still order this one at O'Reilly's or Napa. And just in case you want to see, this is what the code looks like, in case you want to have some. But I'm totally convinced that this is the best oil for the old cars nowadays. So what I usually do with this is that I take out the middle screws or bolts, and then I leave the one on the outer corners on. Then I'm gonna put the pan underneath, because the whole a bunch of oil will come out. So, and I'm gonna release a little bit of this and a lot of this, or maybe even take this one out, and then I'm gonna pry it from here, so it would steer it so the oil would come out from here and not all around. And see how it works. Well, big excitement for nothing. There's not too many oil in it. I don't know, it's most likely leaked out or not sure what, but Pamela said that a couple months ago she moved the car, so that means it did have some oil in it, so actually did something. I don't know how good or bad the transmission is, but nonetheless, we're gonna clean the pan, change the filter, fill it up properly. I got the pan off. I'm gonna clean it off, and then you can see the old filter. It's got all kind of stuff on it, but I think it's just old stuff. I don't know what it doesn't look like anything really bad, but I don't think this filter was changed for a while. So here's the new filter. We'll clean it off, clean off the surfaces, and clean off the inside of that pan and put it right back on. So at the back of the transmission there is that modulator, which I don't know if it's good or not, but I put a hose on it. I put some vacuum on it with this device here, and it is holding the vacuum really nicely. So I guess that modulator is working. It just a rubber hose was disintegrated around it, so which I'm gonna replace in a second. So I don't have the heart to put this part back dirty, so I'm just using all this gunk removal and then trying my best to clean it up a little bit. I know you Corvette guys probably would like holding your head in the disbelief that like this nice car would get rusted parts on it, but I'm not the Messiah. I can't do everything.
It's not my car. I don't want to restore it. I just want to help my neighbor out to get the car back on the road, and I want to help her to be able to drive her dad's car. But yeah, I agree with you. This car would need a total restoration, need to be taken apart and fixed it up right. But she doesn't have the need for that. So yeah. So long story short, cleaning the lower pan and then we're gonna put it back up. All right. So I cleaned all the bolts. I sort of washed this out twice. So it is what it is. It's not exactly clean. There's some sort of glue on it, but I tried to take off with wire brush and all kind of things. That's all she got. But let's put it up. So these are my favorite silicones when it comes to RTV. This one has a different number. This one is for the engine parts. This one is for the transmission parts. And I know it's Mopar and this is a Chevrolet, but there were several tests done. One of those YouTubers, I forgot, he always tests everything, and these ones came out a lot better than the original GM silicones. So I just put a very light layer of that on there, and then I'm able to put the seal on it, and then put a little bit more on the transmission, and it can go back on. Purposely didn't put the filter on it while I was cleaning the bottom to make sure there's no dirt goes on it, because it's very sensitive for it. So now it's up with the 2 bolts and 2 screws and the seal. So now we're ready for the oil pan. Okay, so now that the transmission pan is back up, it was curing all night, and then now we're gonna take the drive shaft off and change the output shaft seal. There's still no oil in the transmission, so this is a good time to do that. And then we're gonna grease up the joints. It's probably a common knowledge, but when you put the car into park, there's a lock goes around the output shaft, and therefore this doesn't let the drive shaft to turn. But if you take the drive shaft off, there's nothing holding the car from moving. So you either have to set the parking brake or put a chock in front of the wheel. I guess it can't roll to the back because there's nowhere to go, but I want to make sure it's not going to fall off. But it's all level and flat. It's just an extra precaution. I may have said it a few times, but I'm not a Corvette enthusiast by any means, but I really appreciate old cars. So it's very interesting to me that the rear axle is actually mounted to the frame, and the differential is mounted to the frame, and you got independent suspensions in the back, which is unlike to any American cars I've seen from the era. But if that happens, then you don't need a moving drive shaft. So basically the drive shaft can be stationary, and you don't have the requirement for this to go in and out in the back, because the backside of the car, the backside of the axle is not going up and down, so therefore the geometry or the distance doesn't change between the transmission and the rear axle. So, but since it was easier to do this, because it was probably a stock transmission from any other car, it was on the line, it just did the good old same slidey thingy. So when I take it out, I can just change the seal on it, made it a lot easier. It's very much look like a Mercedes-Benz underneath from the air, just like my W115 over there, except us. I guess the Mercedes is a little bit more complicated than this thing. So now you guys can see I can just pull this thing out, and then there's the seal. We can change that now. So again, I'm not a car mechanic. I'm an enthusiast, so whatever I do, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. It works for like a very long time now. Look at that transmission in the back. There is that hole over there, and that's where the oil comes out to lubricate the rear bearing, I assume, and then the seal what we're gonna put in. The problem is if you put that together dry, it will burn the seal. So what I started to do is to just grease this seal up before I install it. Therefore, when the transmission starts turning in the first few miles, it will not burn the lip of this seal. This happened to my 57 Ford Fairlane, and then other cars. I got the transmission back from rebuild, and then it burned the seal in the first 10 miles. So since then, I do this. And then when you hit it in, I have a little pipe, what I'm gonna use to hit that in. I don't have a camera stand to show that to you, but we'll hold it there, and then with that pipe, I'm gonna nicely install this new seal in it. And I'm gonna clean this piece a little bit, and then we can put it back together.
So first I just put it there, hit it a little bit with a hammer just to make sure it's stuck. Then I use this, I used a socket, put it over it, and then just hit it in. So now it's in nicely. So now we can clean this piece and put it back. I got everything back together. I greased up the joint, and since I had the grease gun in my hand, I greased up other joints as well. One over here, and then 2 over here, and 2 over there. And then I went to the front and greased up all the suspension parts. Looks like there's some leak, but you can see there. I greased up every single place where there was a grease fitting, but yeah, it looks like it's a older car, but you can actually grease stuff up. I like that. So now the next thing to do is to finish up mounting the brake line. I got a couple of these holders, but had a really hard time accessing on the ground. And then I'm gonna clean up. This is where the a cable comes out from the battery box. This is the battery box, and this is the ground cable coming out and goes into the frame. So I'm gonna clean these up as well to make sure we get a good ground. So now I cleaned off the surface here, these surfaces and all around. And then when I took this bolt off, there was no washers on it whatsoever. So I did a lock washer and a nice big washer, so it will have a nice big surface area to go on it. And I'm gonna treat these components with dielectric grease. It's practically silicone grease to avoid moisture to go in between them. All right, one more last look at the bottom part. Looks like I done everything. I put up these holders. I put up the ground wire. I greased everything up. And I think I'm just gonna leave those engine mounts alone. They look pretty good. Looks like they've been changed not too long ago. I decided to just leave them. And then, well, the only thing what left is putting some fluid in the transmission. So I'll just let this sucker down and then put some fluid in it. Well, here's the moment of truth. So I got a battery which I charged up nicely. So it's time to put that in and see what happens, see if it starts. Pretty sure it will. Last check. Oh yeah, I need to put that dipstick back into the transmission. I filled it up with transmission fluid, but not all the way. So once it's running, I can set up the level. But I put a whole bunch in there, so we'll see. And yeah, I'm gonna put a little gas in the carburetor and then put the battery in. Now in this car, the battery lives behind the driver's seat. We can move the driver's seat back. And right there's the hole. That's where the battery lives. So I'm gonna put that battery in and let's see what happens. Oh, battery is in. Maybe it's a good thing that there's no gas in the carburetor since it was sitting for so long, because I want to make sure that that oil pressure is gonna come up. Well, let's see what happens. Well, it's good news that it's spinning really nicely. Still no oil pressure. Oh, there it comes. Okay, now we got oil pressure. All right. Now we can try to put a little gas in it. Yeah, it looks like the oil is burning off of the exhaust. Had some oil on it, so perfectly normal. I guess let's take it out on a spin, see what happens.
Well, finally she's alive. The brakes were not working too good. So I was thinking maybe I left something out. So sure enough, I didn't put the vacuum hose back on to the booster pump. So I'm surprised it even ran, but I guess it's a Chevy. And no matter what, it will run. It will run. Yeah. So I'm gonna push that back on and see what happens next. Probably it's gonna run a lot better. So it sounds like there's an exhaust leak on the front. Looks like Paula's dad probably hit the curb a few times. And if I put my hand under here, I can feel it really badly. I'll put it back on the lift and then, well, actually I'm just gonna jack it up and then see what's up there. Maybe I can weld it up because it sounds kind of bad that it's coming from the sound is coming from the front, not from the end. And it's got a beautiful sound if it comes out on the end. So we look at it. So now that it's warmed up, we're gonna check the transmission fluid. Yeah, I can tell there's some in it, but it's not totally full. So we'll have to put a little more in it. Yeah, finally I filled it up. Let's see, it took 6 quarts without the torque converter, and it's just totally full. Looks good. I'm looking at this exhaust here. Why is it leaking? And there's not much I can do about it. It's totally rotten away. If you can see between these two parts right here, there's a big split here, and this thing is like super wore out, and not really wore out, just rusted away. So I guess I better just don't even touch it because it's just gonna melt. So this is where the exhaust repair finishes. This thing needs a new exhaust like many other things, but it's not my problem, I would say. It still runs, it's still fine, just have a little noise. So I guess I'm gonna let her do that if she wants to get into that. So I was looking at the instrument inside the car and it was showing me a really high voltage. So I came here and sure enough, it's like 18 volts. So I think this voltage regulator inside this thing is shot. So maybe it has a outside voltage regulator, I'm not sure, but I think I'm gonna change this alternator. So as you see, the lights were operating a little slowly. I have a suspect that it's not a vacuum problem. I suspect it's all rusted up. So you can see that over here, there is a pivoting point. This is the actuator. There's the vacuum line goes in it. And I have a feeling that I pulled this one off and it looks really nice and shiny. So I'm gonna probably just take this shaft out and lube it up, or I'm not sure what, but I think I'm just gonna remove these springs and then take this shaft out. It's supposed to be moving, but it doesn't. So I think it's just rusted up. So we'll clean it up. And it's not a simple thing. I got the actuator disconnected. It was very hard. But when I move this whole thing up and down, it's really hard to push it. So yeah, all these mechanical moving parts are kind of stuck together. So I need to grease it all up. I'm kind of debating maybe I should just remove the whole thing, but maybe I'm gonna start spraying with this penetrating oil and hoping for the best. But it's really hard to move it by hand even, so this vacuum actuator has no chance to do this. I think that's what's wrong with it, just set too long. All right, it's all oiled up, day and night difference. It's just becomes so easy to push, and it's actually locks when it goes out. And it's really hard to do it with one hand, but it works well now. It's all greased up, so I guess it's time to put it together. The only thing I'm gonna do is, since I pulled this pin out, I'm gonna clean it up with a wire brush on my grinding machine and then grease it up since it's in my hand. I got these plastic things, what it runs in, they're gonna be greased up as well. Put the springs back, and one spring was missing from it, so I'm gonna have to find one of those. Let's see, that one is, I can't show it to you. That one is there, the other side was missing, so I gotta find one of those springs. and then we do the other one, do the other side the same way. See, now it's even winking now. I don't know if I fixed it or not. On this side it was going really easily, so I don't know, maybe it's something else, but let's start the engine and see if it works now. It's all lubed up. Well, it's not exactly good. Looks like there's a little interference here, so maybe I need to adjust this door a little bit higher. I hope there's an adjustment on it I can use, but it's not working too well. So there is that 3 bolts over there where the wrench is on it, if you see it. And you can adjust just a tiny bit on the lid to make it go higher a little bit. So I'm hoping now it's gonna clear the body and there's not gonna be no interference. All right. So it looks like it's working now. It's not sticking, so we gotta see why is it so damn slow. So at the bottom there is a little pin what you can pull right there. It's actually illuminated. You pull it down and then it locks the lights, so I can work on that light bulb. I found 4 screws, one here, one there, one there, and one there. And the cover comes off and we got access to this light here. So for a guy from Europe, this is a very interesting thing what you guys did in the US. So in the Europe, we were able to change the light bulbs in these things, but over here, to make sure that every car has a nice mirror in it, now you gotta change the whole thing, and therefore the mirror gets changed as well. So that's a pretty damn smart idea as far as my concern, because some of these cars were running for a long time. And in Europe, you see a lot of dim lights, and that's the reason for it. So anyhow, on this car, high beam, and this outer is low beam and high beam. So this one has 3 prongs. So this one is actually a dual function. This one is a single function. This one only should have 2 connectors. So I'm gonna go to Napa and get another one. Now we're gonna concentrate on the rear light bulbs. So it's basically just 2 screws, what unscrews, and this thing comes out, and you can just twist it out. And then there was the light bulbs. This one was kind of old. On the left side you got a double filament, and the middle that's the reverse light. You only got a single filament, but we're gonna change those nonetheless. And then this one wasn't even in. It was fall down. It was just hanging in the air somewhere. And this is the little light bulb that goes to the position light on the side. We're gonna replace those 2. You can get that you can reach that from the inside. You twist it out, and then you just pull this light bulb out. Fairly easy thing to do, but since we're working on this, we'll do it. And next one is the license plate lights. I don't know how to do that yet. I haven't really figured it out. I'm gonna lift it up a little bit and look behind it, see how can I get to it. Hey, Mark Stanson, if you're watching this video, he was absolutely right. Now I'm gonna have to take off the alternator. It's overcharging and has a bearing problem, so this sucker is coming out, putting a new one in. I didn't want it to touch anything until I knew for sure it was broken, because I don't want to spend Paula's money for no reason, because I'm doing the job for free as a present for her to help her, but she's paying for the parts. So I didn't want it to start throwing money around, which is not mine. But this one is absolutely necessary. So next thing we do, removing the alternator. Thanks, Mark. You were right. So the first thing I usually do when I'm changing an alternator is disconnecting the battery connector. So we're gonna open the door, and the battery is right there, so I'm gonna remove the negative terminal. I always removing the negative terminal first, because if I touch the ground for some reason, then there's no sparks flying everywhere. Don't ask me how I learned that. It's fairly easy to take a alternator off on this car. So basically just take this first bolt out. At first you're taking the connectors out. So the connector what goes into the side, and then the ground positive, already battery connector is already disconnected, correct? And then you take this big bolt out, and then the whole thing comes out. So in order to make this whole thing come down, you got to loosen this big bolt, because that's gonna hold it. And then you take the belt off of it, and then you just take it out. You hear it? That bearing is shot, it's dry. Well, I got the light bulbs. Before I put the light bulbs in, I put a little bit of this dielectric grease on it, so it wouldn't be getting stuck in it for next time we take it apart. That's where it goes right in. And then we do this. This is the license plate light. And then we got two more. If you look at it from here, there's one more we're gonna put in, and there's one on the other side. And then we're gonna finish off the tail lights. Well, I was just about to put this light on, but it's not exactly the right size for here. So back to Napa and get the correct size. Older guys, please don't be mad at me. But maybe some younger guys don't know this. There's two different light bulbs. They all look the same, but one has two of those balls on the bottom, the other one only has one. Because on the left side, that's one filament, the other side has two filaments. One for the brake light, one for the position light. So it's not to be exchanged between them, so it's just not gonna work. So the one on the left is the reverse light, the other one is gonna be the position light and the brake light. The bigger one is the brake light. As you see, it's a more solid one, I mean it's more lights, and then the one on the top, I mean it's less light, so that's for the position light. So again, I'm gonna put a little bit of dielectric grease on it and put them back on. So again, for my younger viewers, I like to show you that there's a stick what's sticking out at the bottom here, and you can see there's a hole there what this stick needs to find down there. So when you put that light in, it only goes into one way, and I found that if you put the two bolts in it or two screws in it and you hold it with that, you can find the hole quite easily. The reason for that, because at the bottom they have a hole there where the water what might gets in it, like the moisture or something, can escape. So that's the easiest way to put this light back on. Just a reminder, the battery is still disconnected. Make sure none of these wires will touch. So now I have the longer bolt back in. Now I'm gonna pull this up and install oh, it's hard to do it with one hand. Install the belt. Belt is on. Then we're gonna have that bolt go through here. And now on this car, there is this, whatever that is, to protect other parts of the car from the belt if it breaks. Need to be readjusted because it's just a little different. So I'm gonna put that one more screw back in what came with the alternator, like right here, and then we're gonna tighten it. So this one gonna be almost tightened to make sure it's still adjustable. And I don't really like that too much, it's too small, so I think I'm gonna put a larger washer underneath. But we're gonna put something here and then we pull it, tighten this one, and then tighten the bottom one. So the top one is tightened, and now I'm tightening the bottom one. See, there's a wrench here on the inner side, and then there's a socket on the outer side, and then just tighten it up. Okay, so now we have all the bolts tightened. I readjusted this, it looks good. This one is tight, the bottom long one is tight. So now we can concentrate on the back one. This is the positive, negative connector, done. Before I install any electrical connector back, I like to clean it off. I use this wire brush, and then you can use a little Dremel tool too. So, but I cleaned up the surface, so now I can put it back on. It's gonna be clean for sure. I also did the ground previously, but those are all clean as well. It's very important for an alternator or any other electrical component. So when I finish installing a component, I always double check again that I did everything. So let's think it through. We got the long bolt at the bottom tight. We got the whole thing tightened, and the belt is good. Belt protector is good. Wires are attached. The ground wire there, positive there. The little boot is on, and the slide-on connectors are connected. I guess we are good here. We can reconnect the battery. So we reached the last part of the repair. I had to add just a little bit more oil to it. And then I changed the windshield wipers because Paula was very concerned about the windshield wipers. wash the windshield a little bit, and then we're gonna start it up and take it outside, make it run a little bit. So as you heard, the engine died. I put a little gas in it to start it. And as soon as the gas burns off, whatever we dump in it, it will die. So the options are, there's no gas in the car, although it's showing half tank, which may or may not be accurate. The other problem can be fuel filter or can be fuel pump. So now I'm gonna take this fitting off and see if we can suck some fuel through and see if the fuel will come out or not. I think that's the way to troubleshoot this. I use this big 1/16 wrench and then use the 5/8 to open it up. The 5/8 is a pipe wrench, and then the other one got a little trickery on it. I guess I cut it from a previous job. See, there's a cut on it, but it fits perfectly here, so that's what I use. And then looks like there's some fuel coming out here, so maybe there's some fuel, but we'll try it, see what happens. Unfortunately, we had a little coordination problem here, but the good news is that the fuel was coming out like no tomorrow, so the fuel is up, sprayed everything around here, so I guess the fuel delivery system works and there is fuel in it. We were just too impatient. We're supposed to crank it a little bit more. I got a feeling that maybe the needle valve is sticking or the float is kind of stuck in it for whatever reason. So I think I'm gonna knock on the carburetor housing a little bit and try it again. Okay, try it now. A little more. Next, I want to check all the lights, make sure when we change the light bulbs, everything is working on it. License plate light works on it too. Side. And then on the front, there's one more side marker on this side. Yeah, that works. Headlight works now. The nice new bulb. It looks like everything else is fine. All right. Let's see if it closes up. Yep. And then very slowly it went down. Well, it works. Doing my last checks before I put that hood down. Let's see, I put this one on, I put the other side on, put this one back on. I have the oil filler cap on. That's all I did today. And then looks everything fine with the windshield wipers, which I just changed this morning. So well, let's close the hood and see if it runs. right, guys, so here's Paula. She's gonna talk about her car and her dad's car, I guess.
Hey, this was originally my father's car. He passed away in 21, but when he was 49, he had major heart surgery, had to have bypass surgery. And a little bit of backstory, my mother had one when they first got married, a Corvette, and he always wanted another one. And that's the first thing he did after his open heart surgery was went out and bought this car. And that was in 87. He bought it used, but it has been his baby ever since. In the last several years, when he got to where he couldn't get in and out of it very well, which is difficult, he didn't drive it much, so it just sat. So yes, Peter has done a lot of major work to it to get it back in running order. And he was very protective of it. He didn't let anybody drive it. I think I might have drove it once before he passed away, maybe twice. The paint job, it was painted like this with the custom paint job when he got it. A tree did fall on it one time, and he did have to have it redone, and he was able to find the guy that had originally done the paint job and had it all redone.
Paula's dad died July of 21. I didn't realize it was that long ago. So the car was sitting there ever since then. And then I just really felt bad that the nice Corvette just getting dustier and leaves falling on it, and then nothing happens to it. So there you go. Here's your car. We'll try to start it and then see if it works. So tell me one more thing. What is that license plate on the front says Peaches?
That was his nickname. That's what most people knew him by. Nobody around here that known him most of his life didn't even know his real name.
So the Corvette is back where it started from. Thank you for watching. See you guys next week.